Just got a minute here, but wanted to see if I could encourage some people, and we'll see if anybody jumps on. Hey, hey, good to see you guys. Selly, is that how you say that? Good to see you. What's up, Katie? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. You guys are having a pretty good day. Just thought I'd jump on here and encourage you a little bit. If you guys have any questions, just let me know and I'll do my best to answer. It is a live stream, so I you know, can't do too much, but I can definitely give you a tip or two that hopefully will encourage you on your journey. You said just woke up to this video as my alarm. Time to wake up. Good to see you, Phil. Good to see you, Katie. First time I catch you. Awesome. What do you got? A quick question for you. I'll try to make sure I answer. I don't have much time right now. I do got a lot of meetings pretty much every day now. But anyway, but especially today, I've got a lot. So drop your question. Let's see if I can knock out two or three questions real quick over the next maybe 15 minutes or so. I'm glad that you're happy. That's awesome. Yeah, any questions about anxiety, panic attacks, trauma, complex trauma, depersonalization, realization, existential obsession and rumination, health anxiety, depression, addiction? Um, so Phil G says, are there any medications that you need to be off of before coaching? I know there were some that interfere with recovery, like Ativan, since it numbs part of the brain. Okay, that's a good question. So the studies that I've looked at would say that, which, oh yeah, disclaimer, this isn't medical advice. I can't give any advice about medication, so make sure to talk to a doctor or a licensed mental professional about that. But from an education perspective, the studies that I've looked at would say that SSRIs don't interfere with some of the things that we would have you do that would desensitize some of your sensory triggers, for example. But benzodiazepines sometimes uh, would cause some problems, according to these studies that I read in this book by some doctors that had quoted them. And the reason why is because benzodiazepines, according to the study, essentially tranquilize the amygdala, and it makes it to where the brain can't really generate new learning with neuroplasticity in order to desensitize sensory triggers and things like that. Um, you know, People do work with us who are on SSRIs and benzos, and we never tell them to stop taking it. We always tell them to talk to their doctor, but some people do decide to stop taking it with their doctor just because they find that they don't need it anymore once they can really self-regulate. Um, but uh, but yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts on that. Katie Parker. So tips on intrusive thoughts. So what are the intrusive thoughts, if you don't mind sharing? That will help me kind of contextualize my advice for that. Okay, gotcha, Phil. Makes sense. So Danica said taking Xanax while experiencing DPR made the dissociation worse. Never again. So, again, I can't give advice about medication, but I can educate you about kind of what we've observed working with thousands of trauma, anxiety, DPR sufferers. And it tends to either be one of two things. One is that the meds don't do anything. The other situation, which is very common, is that there's like a paradoxical reaction where they get more DPDR, more anxiety, more panic. Very, very, very common. There are some instances where they help people, for sure, but doesn't appear to be very common that it really helps people very much. Harvey says, when you were experiencing depersonalization realization, um, did you find that the first person view to be strange, and is that something that I can help? Um, Explain what you mean by that. So Brandon, good to see you, Brandon. Hope you're doing well. So he says, what kind of existential thoughts did you have? Might have been causing me a lot of stress. So whenever I struggled with extreme existential obsession and rumination, it was related to consciousness. The nature of reality was another one. The afterlife. Those were kind of the three big ones: consciousness, the nature of reality, and the afterlife. And I would just sit and obsess over those all day long. And they brought extreme, anxiety. And we work with a lot of people that struggle with extreme existential obsession and rumination. And a lot of times it's induced through depersonalization realization, because DPDR are quite existential um, in nature. So you said make sure to de-stress. I can tell you might have had a tough day. No, my day is good. Um, I'm just helping people in a lot of serious situations. And there's a very serious, like, normally I do live streams at the end of the day, and so it's a little bit different, but I'm kind of in and out of coaching sessions. And um, I'm helping people who have been through the mental health system, they've been through the medical system. A lot of times they've tried popular approaches to no avail. It is very serious work. um, a lot of people tell me that I'm their last hope, and I carry traumatized people on my back, and I have to be their hope. And it's a lot of energy, and it's very, very serious. And so what you're thinking is me having a bad day or me being stressed is just the seriousness of what I do. So I'm having a great day and I'm not stressed at all. But if you catch me during the day whenever I'm working with people that are at their final straw, as far as they don't know what else to try, you have a very serious tone. So, but I'm having a good day so far. So, Pink, you said, is the feeling of being dead a normal symptom of DPDR? I mean, there's a lot of different metaphors that people use to describe it. That possibly could be one. But if you're in a severe state of, traumatic stress, um, one thing that you can consider doing is, in all of my videos, there's a link to my 5 shifts still from trauma, anxiety, and DPR masterclass. It's free. Make sure to check that out, and that will really encourage you and kind of give you the basic neuroscience of what's going on and how to heal. Okay, silly. I went and saw your question. So you said I experienced the fear of death. My brain constantly reminds me that I will die. Do you think this thought is preventing me from getting out of depersonalization? And do you have some advice? So I've got a lot to say about the fear of death. And in a live stream, it's hard to really go over an entire framework of healing for anything. But what I will tell you, just to give you some encouragement, is everybody has the fear of death to a degree, right? You don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know how it's going to happen. It really does make you feel out of control if you sit and meditate on that. But there's a difference between having the fear of death that you occasionally think about and something that is obsessive, right? It's almost like a phobia. Um, so it sounds like you may be dealing with kind of not just the general fear of death, but a phobia of the fear of death, where it's like all consuming. And that could be creating overwhelm and inducing a trauma state, which thus induces the trauma coping mechanisms of depersonalization realization. It's a very big possibility. So, and as far as overcoming the fear of death, again, there's a lot that I could say to that. But one thing that I do, and I've done this for several years now, and it has really helped me, is I tell myself that I'm not going to die until I have fulfilled my mission in life. Right? So I'm a father, I'm a husband, I've got a lot of people to help in this life. And I tell myself that I'm not going to die until my mission is fully accomplished. And maybe it's naive. We're not promised tomorrow. But I do believe that I will accomplish my purpose. Well, not my purpose. I believe my purpose is to know God and to be known by God. But my mission, rather. I believe that I will accomplish my mission, which is the world will know that I was here, and we will help turn the tide when it comes to mental health, especially trauma. That's part of my mission. And so I tell myself that I'm not going to die until that happens, but most importantly, raising my kids and being there, for my family, walking my daughters down the aisle, so important to me. And I'm just going to tell myself that I'm not going to die until that happens. And I think also just, you know, n- radical acceptance is really important. Just accepting it. Like, we will die one day. There's no way to get out of it. And just coming to this place where you don't sit and dwell on it and you just do the best you can to live a great life. Right. Oh, thank you. Hello 999 for the donation. And I'm glad that that helped you. That's awesome. How long does it, so Iris, good to see you, Iris. How long does it usually take for people who do your program to heal from DPDR? It varies widely, and I just did a video where I do give kind of some general time frames. It's called "How Long Does It Take to Eliminate Derealization" or something like that, or depersonalization. So watch that video. Um, but the big challenge with getting rid of depersonalization realization is that there's a lot of layers of stress that have built up. I always tell people, getting rid of symptoms is like peeling an onion, and there's a lot of things that we need to deal with, especially things happening in the body. Depersonalization, realization are trauma coping mechanisms. Trauma is a state of nervous system overwhelm. And there's a lot of buildup in the body of tension, adrenaline, emotion, and fatigue. And so the first journey to healing trauma is you have to get back in the body, which is interoception, the experience of the embodied self. And that takes some time just to get back in the body. People are highly somatically dissociated. They are living in their heads and they're numb to what's happening inside. That's been the escape, which, don't feel any shame for that. If you're always in your head and you're doing things to numb your body, alcohol, nicotine, food, porn, whatever, doesn't make you a bad person. But what it does mean is while you were in your head and you were numbing your body was filling up more and more with tension, adrenaline, emotion, and fatigue. And so whenever I help people face their body, initially it can be quite uncomfortable. But that's a prerequisite for healing. Trauma is a body that is constantly preparing for a threat that never comes. And so, thus, to heal trauma, we got to get you back in your body and we have to release the buildup in the body. And then you get co regulation, which is working with somebody who makes you feel safe as you're learning how to do that. The DPDR are a secondary issue. That's what a lot of people don't understand. Like almost every one of you, you think depersonalization realization is the primary issue. And that is why you're going to stay stuck until you start to focus on what the real root issue, which is that your body is in a state of overwhelm. And there's usually a lot of lifestyle factors that are contributing to stress and overwhelm too, whether it's a relationship, job, there's different things like that. Sometimes principles like, you know, you push your body too hard, you don't listen to your body. There's all kinds of things that are leading to overwhelming stress. The DPDR are there to disconnect you from that overwhelming stress. They're trauma coping mechanisms. They are there to dissociate you. They're dissociative symptoms. Dissociation comes from a Latin root word that means to sever or to separate. So they are there to separate you from overwhelm in your body and life. You start to feel detached from your body. You start to feel like the world is a dream world. That's your brain trying to protect you. Technically, your brain thinks that you're being eaten by a lion. And so the purpose of DPDR is to make you feel numb and dissociated. So that way, if you are being eaten by a lion, you don't feel it. But as long as you're trying to directly get rid of DPDR, you're wasting your time. They are appropriate. They are biologically correct symptoms whenever your body is in a trauma response. So if you had a bacterial infection and instead of taking antibiotics, you were focused on trying to get rid of the sneezing or the coughing or whatever, it's not that you couldn't mitigate those symptoms or even temporarily get rid of them through over the counter medicine or whatever. But if you really want to get to the root, you need antibiotics. So imagine if everybody who had a bacterial infection was spending all their time only dealing with the symptoms of the bacterial infection instead of getting rid of the bacterial infection itself. They'd still have the bacterial infection, even if they could mitigate their symptoms or temporarily get rid of them through over the counter medicine. And that's what people are doing with depersonalization realization. Because the symptoms are so scary, they assume that they are the root problem. And it's like a dog chasing their tail, right? They're not getting anywhere because the symptoms are not the problem. They are actually the solution. They are your brain's solution to dissociate you from overwhelm happening in the life and body. And so, what I do, the first part of what I do with my clients is I take them through some scientific education. I show them the latest neuroscience of what's causing their symptoms, especially as it relates to complex trauma, which is the slow buildup of stress. And once you see why you're in the symptoms and that they're actually there to help you and not hurt you, we can take our attention off of the symptoms and put them on to the real root problem, which is that your body is a place of chaos and pain. And there's probably a lot of lifestyle adjustments that we need to make too. And once we start to do that in the presence of somebody who can make you feel safe, which is co regulation, be there for you through the ups and downs, it just works. It works. It's extremely effective. But as long as you're trying to directly get rid of the symptoms, again, you're a dog chasing your tail. The best you're going to get is symptom mitigation, maybe temporary full relief. But until you deal with the root, which is, again, mainly things in the body, you're not fully recovered yet. Even if the symptoms are gone, if you never dealt with the root of what's happening in your body, they will come back. And I don't say that to scare you. I work with people every day that they didn't really get to the root and they thought, oh, the symptoms are gone, I'm cured. And then years later, they come back with a vengeance. That's what happened to me. I used acceptance techniques to get rid of DPDR. It did happen every now and then, but got rid of panic attacks. I was like, dude, acceptance is the cure, man. Like, that's where it's at. You just invite in your symptoms and everything goes away. I'm cured. And I wasn't self regulating. I wasn't releasing the tension, adrenaline, emotion from my body. I had no boundaries in my life. I wasn't interoceptive, which is the experience of the embodied self. Wasn't listening to my body. Didn't have boundaries in life, and wasn't eating healthy. Wasn't exercising, and everything built up. A couple years later, bam! All my symptoms came back, and this time, no acceptance technique worked. And it worked the first time. Worked. Because at that point there was too much buildup. So whenever I'm telling you guys that acceptance is not enough and distraction is not enough, I'm telling you that from the place of experience, not only personally, but having worked with people who did that. And it is very frustrating whenever you thought you were cured and then the symptoms come back and then the techniques that you used to use to help you, whether it's acceptance or distraction, don't work anymore. So I'm trying to help you not make the same mistake that I made and so many other people make. Do the work. Get in tune with your body, make your body your safe place, work from a place of rest, and get co-regulation too, especially if it's a pretty complex trauma situation, meaning you've got a really painful history. You're probably going to need quite a bit of co-regulation, whether it's me or somebody else. I'd love to work with you if we can, but just you need co-regulation, and we need to get you back in the body. We need to get you releasing the buildup from the body. It's super important. And until you do that, you're just a dog chasing your tail, and I don't want to see that happen to you. Johannes says, "What do you recommend for working with anger after having a boundary crossed by somebody you see daily? Get alone and allow yourself to be angry. Buy a punching bag." I tell all my clients, buy a punching bag, like the one that has water in the bottom. Get on Facebook Marketplace. You can usually find it for $50. Get on Amazon. You can find it for like 75 to 100. One of the best investments that I've ever made, right? I don't get angry very often, but if I do, I got some boxing gloves out there in the garage. I got the kick bag set. I just beat the crap out of that thing and release it in about a minute, right? So you need to release the anger. You also can kind of scream into a pillow. You can just go driving, kind of scream. And the key is just feel that emotion, feel the anger and let it peak and then come down. That's how you get rid of that anger. Also, some exercise, like some fast jumping jacks or kind of sprinting, that can also help get some of that anger out. And then also, I think, kind of an audio journal, kind of verbally kind of releasing some of that, kind of your thoughts, just kind of hit the record button on your phone, just kind of release everything that you need to say. First, get rid of the adrenaline in the body, but then the audio journal can help kind of work things out too. Um, ISO Heal says, "I remember watching you way back in 2018. I had severe DPDR then. I'm all fine now. I never got to say thank you for saving me back then." Well, I'm so glad that you're better. That is awesome. So Ben with an N asked, about kind of trauma versus complex trauma. No, they're different. So a major trauma is a sudden state of overwhelming stress. Complex trauma is repeated stress and oftentimes adversity over a period of time. The example would be and I talk about this in my free 5 shifts masterclass. There's a link on my profile, all of my long videos. Um, Even on this video, there should be a link to it. It's free. There's also a button where you can apply. You click the button and then fill out the application, and then it'll go to book a call to speak with me and my team, and we'll see if we can help you too, by the way. But anyway, in that masterclass, I talk about this. Um, a major trauma is like a lightning strike, and it comes sudden, fast. Let's say you had a relatively calm life prior to that. Not like a super severe complex trauma history. And then all of a sudden something happens and you're not able to cope with it. You hit a point of overwhelm and then a trauma state happens. Um, Complex trauma is like slowly filling up a cup of water. The state of nervous system overwhelm doesn't happen all at once. It's the slow buildup of stress over time. And then eventually you hit that overwhelm point. So, whether it's a major trauma or complex trauma, the end result is a state of nervous system overwhelm, but there's just a different path to getting there. And the thing, like the reason why it's significantly harder to heal from complex trauma than a major trauma is because if it's complex trauma, you've got a lot more sensory triggers because you've got a significantly more complex history of pain. The person healing from a major trauma is only needing to heal from a single situation that caused overwhelm. But whenever you're dealing with complex trauma, which is almost exclusively the clients that I work with as of right now, you've got an unthinkable amount of triggers from a very complex trauma history. So there's a lot more rewiring to do in the brain, body, and nervous system with complex trauma. And the symptoms also are different as well. So, for example, one symptom of complex trauma is a categorical collapse. So, whenever you've had repeated stress and adversity with a certain situation over and over and over again, eventually your brain could collapse the entire category and say everything categorically to do with that thing is dangerous. Have you ever heard somebody that says, all police officers are bad, or all men are going to hurt me, or all women are going to hurt me, or even just all people are dangerous? Have you ever heard somebody say that? Or maybe that's been you that has said that. It's not contextual, right? There's good cops and bad cops. Let's even say most of them are good. There's good men and bad men. There's good women and bad women, as far as like their behavior and stuff. But in their mind, all of them are dangerous because of their history, right? If you have an allergic reaction to a flower one time, your brain's going to say bad flower. But if you have repeated allergic reactions over and over and over again, there is a point where your brain will collapse the whole category and say all flowers are bad. Flowers are dangerous, plural. That's complex trauma. That's part of complex trauma, right? And especially with complex trauma, your brain can kind of go into this hypervigilant state, especially with people like who's going to hurt me next? Who's going to use me? Who's going to abuse me? Who's going to betray me? Right? That's part of complex trauma, is that hypervigilant state that is a defense mechanism to keep you from this very complex, painful history repeating itself. So anyway, there's more symptoms of complex trauma, but just to give you a couple that can happen. Yeah, black or white thinking. Yep. Pink09 says, can DPDR be permanent, like 24/7? So let's separate 24/7 from permanent. Are the symptoms all the time for some people? Yeah, I would say almost a majority of the people that come to work with me, their symptoms are all the time at first. We do get people that they're episodic, so they're not all the time starting out. But just because they're 24/7 doesn't automatically mean that they're permanent, that it's going to stay like that forever. Um, if you have the right approach and you get to the root, self-regulation, co-regulation being a big part of that. Hold on, let me check my schedule really quick. I actually got a pretty. Yesterday was crazy. I worked from like 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. It was a very busy day. You can see up my nose. Hopefully, there's not anything there. Any creatures hanging out. Um, uh, Hold on, let me check one thing really fast. list. Okay. Oh goodness. Okay, yeah, I do got to jump off here, guys. But the good news is I'm going to be doing lots of Q&As. So I'll be back. What's up, Barry? Good to see you. Fiza, can you ask more questions until yeah, I do actually have to jump off here, guys. I just realized, hold on one second, actually. Let's see here. Okay, yep, I gotta jump off here, guys. Hope you have a good day, and we'll talk to you real soon, okay? Good to see you guys. Take care.